we are is identifying where we aren't. It's knowing exactly who we are and when we always are in position of invisible worlds. But it's all a process how we are, our imagination of the center of the system. Not position lines is setting location of CENTER. That's the center of the system and travel. Process into the compound to the foundation grounds puts you into CENTRE is the foundation of itself line that puts you in position to your Tango Foxtrot location, your system and settings, your delta headings, your stream locations, your hotel golf. So that puts you in a combination system all through combination and all through travel. So I put out a very powerful video for you guys that we live in visible worlds. Now it's connected with Azra and we're in that position location, showing you exactly what happens with the digital pad, how it disappears. But it didn't disappear. Okay, it's still there. Now, what we have to understand is our bodies aren't there physically. It's there mental, physically. The mental capacity is the psychological to the psychosis, how we see things through our image. Our God images how we see things. Is all identified through imagination itself. And that position of light and travel. And that position locations, right? See? It's amazing how I changed the factors, see? Isn't that unbelievable? That was proof to give you exactly how I can just be me and just be whatever I want, right? Just be the process of me. This is the DOS right now, right? That's back in this true formation system, right? So I'm still traveling through light, but I'm in true form. So I can do whatever I want, being specific. But the video shows you, okay? It shows you exactly what goes on as we're in metaphysical worlds, invisible worlds, in our imaginations of ourselves, right? So it's just totally normal, right? Everything's normal. But in the video, it shows you exactly how the operating system operates its own system, how it can show you in so different ways so you process your body, understand how to use your imagination, and put everything in locations of projection of light. And when you're traveling through light, it builds a compensation system. Also the particles going through the streaming, up and down in lines of cycle, circular and rotation system, all through settings. Because you have to understand that's how we're made. We're made from that structure, through molecules and protons, electrons, neutrons, photons, and protons, and neurons, and your network systems and modification systems. But you're not physically here, okay, until you bring in projection of light. That process everything of dark. It's just the perspective, how you see things, okay, how you see the inner system to the outer cycle, inner norm to the outer norm, inner space, outer space, inner orbits, outer orbits, inside of you. But everything is process of the center. Now, this is where you have to come into the particle system now, because it regenerates the soul generation system and traction. So the body has to be completely centered at all times. So the particle goes with you in that direction. You don't want the particle system going in the opposite right centers, because it's not modifying your location of acceleration lines of speed, mocking lines, interstellar mode, hyperdrive. In that position location, it's all done through particle acceleration. Okay, particle acceleration settings, knowing actually how to go through that. In that position of process, engaging, forming, shaping lines of your anomalies. Okay? But that video, check it out. I just put it up. All right, so set position lines as centers of travel, converts operational signals. Now with 42 lights of streaming, that calculation modifies online communication setting. So your schematics get a lot more complicated to your sim. You guys have your test on Friday, but you also have your test for next Friday that's in position that's happening now. Everything happens in the process of now. So we reconvene to its operation system instructions, okay? That's a test for next Friday. 4 different windows, line ground centers and locations. Converting just the position of the grounds, line condition setting, okay? Just to show you how you can see 4 different windows and set position and provision, okay? That's a test for next Friday, okay? Which has already happened, set lines of travel, okay? 4 different lines of calculation. So all you're seeing is a different perspective of each window. That process how you see the truth and the false narrative that get you in divergence, allegiance, and alliance in a particle line of streaming. Lights, lines of streaming, line communication stream, snowy graph, and interference location of streaming. It just shows you exactly how everything light operates its own self. So it is its own operation, its own demonstration that I gave to you guys in position locations, which was a wonderful stuff. It's not magic, it's real time, real space. So once you know how to master yourself, you have to understand how to master your body through travel. And the way to understand that, you have to understand how to go through your defrags, location, your centralized systems, understand how to go through the motivation system, how to go through the technological system, how to go through the energized system, how to go in positions in settings, reform, deform. It's all about understanding how to change a particle system, how to change the circulation rotation of setting, how to change the electrical grids, how to change the panels, how to change electrical lines and wires, how to change all communications inside of you, because that's how you guys are made. Okay, you're all made from particle streaming, but you have to understand that when you're taking naps and when you're going to sleep, there's particle systems that are leaving the system. You energize, and then you come back in information setting when you guys get up in your system and attractions. So all you're doing is revamping, recalculating, remodify, readjusting, reforming, reline division your system so through particle streaming. Okay, so in that lines of screens, process line position location of SIM, let's get 42 streamlines of 3-line signals. Now things are going to get a lot more complicated because we're going through Gulf streams. Okay, these are Gulf stream locations that process your highways and travel, all through triangulation. Okay, so we overcross line grounds, high operation locations. Everything you calculate and modify is nothing but travel mechanism lines of setting. Okay, so you work with longitude, latitude, and then you bring it in, which you want to work with in line set locations. Boxing window frames, line connection setting, all through box locations, coming in position locations. You start with the rulers and 4 centers of travel. Okay, converting line position lines to 2 panels, 1 grounds, 1 ceiling operation cycle. So this helps you to identify how you see the positive and negative and everything of its truth. Okay, you've got truth line centers at the bottom line position, and we have false, okay, which is the outside lines of space and travel communication. All right, you work with that, and then you got your 2 panels. Now the 2 panels process lines of direct location, how you go through correlation lines to your system, low spectrum, high spectrum. So that's 0/1, okay, that's percentage over 2, percentage over 6, percentage over 8, and percent over 12. Body capacity, flux capacity, body capacitor location setting, process lines of 0, 0, 0, 0. That's process 3 lines of setting. That's 5 lines of 1 operation system and center operation itself. Okay, so understanding what the product's going to do through triangulation as you go in that rotation of its direction. So you have that process calculating line grounds. The operation setting is the projection of a light that you process your system and travel. That converts the lines of angles, that puts all position in your system, all through setting. Okay? And travel communications to your particle system. So your particles have to go in the same streaming, the same directions, and then they expand out and they come back. They expand out, come back, expand out. So it's understanding how to take full convergence of you through projection of light. Once you master yourself through light of you first, you have to recognize you are a body of light. But you're not physically here. You're mentally, physically here through the conception, how you see the mind inception, how you create it through imagination of itself. That's what brings in the particle system. But you're being specific how you bring things in through carbon-based, silicon-based, crystalline, antimetal, anticarrier, alter-skelter. You depend on how you want to bring yourself in. But that's how you see yourself in projection of light. Okay? So it just gives you an understanding how you see the triangulations and the configuration system all through triangulation and set position of a box. Okay? Start with that position lines and settings. Starting face recognition system and working with line connection setting and travel of communication shoulders into positions to your line connection setting, which is your chest plates, in location setting. Starting that position, the particle system starts to recognize you through the truth. Process lines of all calculated and modified. So 0 operation lines of particle streamings goes to 3 centers of angles and 4 centers of scale. Okay? So that puts all communication system and track lines, communication lines of grounds. The process indicates the system come in your time centers and set position of operation. Okay, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 is always in the center operation or setting, right? Because that's your 7 chakras. Now the 7 chakras lines grounds location, setting, position, operation, and service. Change the particle system. Now the calculate, modify, you can understand how to go through the wind lines of factors, travels in point lines of graph, and particle line, or protons, location, electrons, neutrons, photons, or anything in neurological, pathological system, your neural links that process you interline connection setting to interface. Process that direct location system is also conception time or frame. So that puts location setting, 7-line charge mechanism, outer space. Okay, that puts position of 3, line position of 4, 5, and 6 locations. All right, so that's 6/1 and 6 over grounds. Okay, you got 6 in center, and you get 6 operational clocking center of operation. Okay, so it's really interesting how you see the clocking line convergence system and mind conception itself, and you start to recognize how to see the particle system of travel. That process you're in, position torical fields, travels point lines of graph. This is where the CERN comes in. CERNs are positioning your particle stream, and that process your floaters as direct line lengths and communicates the setting. The time measures the scales that communicates the setting of surface and travel. that communicates all grounds and operation system all through calculation of your simulation sim. Okay? All through setting, all through tractions, all through directions of your symbiote and operation system. Okay? That calculates and modifies everything in travel. Okay? So this helps you to get in positional case to a cycle, the symbiote itself. All right? Okay? So that's what, when you see the video, okay, you see what the symbiote can do. It can stretch its hand, it can stretch its legs, it can stretch its arms, it can stretch its face, it can stretch its neck, because it understands it's part of a system of streaming. So it's mastered itself through its own intel, it's mastered itself through its projection of light, which is everything else of its own conscious. So they merge the particles into conscious locations into the atmospheres, into the biosphere, or in that position, those biofields. Knowing exactly how to come into the conceptual setting and start to recognize how you see yourself in all formations of a symbiote. Okay? That's a symbiote wrapping everything around its system. Okay? Very powerful stuff. All right, so that's, now you understand what it is. It's just a plasma coat. It's just a costume that you wear, but you constantly understand how to change the time frame, location, convergence system all through operation line, calculation lines, and system method that travels that puts position, point, graph, calculation lines, and grounds. The process of your direct center location system. Okay, so we platitude 4 lines of ones and 4 box lines. Simulation grounds, simulation processing, simulation over line signals at location. So you just get a lot more fun as you work with the simulation at different angles. Now this process is the umbrella and set lines of travel. See the umbrella? Then we go through the ether, then we go through the core, then we go through the firmament, and then we go through the webbing system of travel. Okay, converting timelines, inside line communication setting, open all signals. Now that process line position locations. Then you come into the grounds. Okay, 3 lines of panels, 4 lines of signals, 5 lines of measure. Scales, cross-line calculation setting, road graph screen location setting, converting set lines of travel. The operation system puts all communication setting to its bridging and set lines of set calculations. Okay, so it's very informative how you use the line signals to your system all through adaptation of flux over travel over mechanism line position of operation. Okay? Bringing in the calculation line course centers, you come into window lines. Now each window has its own course centers of time flux, that process lines of time measured, time scales, times panel, time edit line and course centers, bending space over travel, line communication setting, converts the timelines to location in seconds, minutes, and hours. Flights over manifest, process lines of sonograph interference, the 2 channels of operation. Okay, and we got signal fine line grounds into position 2 operation lines, 0 ground line communication. And we got 42 lights in line position in black and white and black line operation lines of signal. That process line position location and grab lines, and gravity location system and travel. Converting time frame line centers opens all pixelation graphs of TV receptors, lines of screens. Setting course centers, lines of travel, converting line operations, signal lines, positions, all through position lines of center. So once we have the void line indicates the setting, the mass line volumes location depicts the location's failsafe. Process lines and proxy channels, operation lines, course centers, relay consistent all through travel, communication lines, and bridging. So we process line direct centers, correlate the lines and motion line tractions, bring in line security over line signals. 2 lines measure, 1 line signal, 1 line operation line signal location setting to travel, converting operation signal locations. Then we go into the blue plasma line, goes to the plasma line sync, line course centers to the plasma goals, directing ground centers, processes position location 3 signals of lights, line signal location setting, projection of light over travel, and set position of operation. Okay, you bring that in, position of recourse, calculate and modify, change course centers of time line to broadcasting. Broadcasting line centers, brings the wave lines course centers, alpha lines of wave and location system all through travel. Converting timeline center, lock line, and screen location setting, you bring in position location panels, operate location system, attractions. Now directing line link, you process that in position location system. Okay, bring in the projection of light. Okay, through light and lines. So the more you see your projection of light, the more it gets easier to identify your settings, your 12 lines, your 24 lines of line signals that process your holographic lines of projection of light, how you want to see the specific locations of travel. Okay, trying through that is monitoring the system of the calculation-based relation graphs. Calculate and modify wire signatures as lines of travel. Okay, very powerful lines of position, how you see that, and all communication system of the calculation, right? The biometric meters has a scale meter. The process lines a slide projector, high line screens, adaptation of process lines, 12 line coloration lines, patterns, operation signals, process psychosis location, and meta line interference that gets into the meta line communication, converting it into timeframes. That's process your calculation, your simulation line connection setting, and tech and operation system locations to your biofields. The operation location, your quantum fields, nanofields, operation line calculation, cyber fields, operation locations into quantum line generation. Soul regeneration line grounds, high center lines, electrical line, grid line, communication lines, a process line, direct location system, all through travel. Converting line and wire signatures, set lines of signals, to weather line operation signals and set travels. Okay, origin over factors, factors over screen. Then we go through 42 line rotations. So you have to understand how to go through 12 layers and projection of light, so you can master the communication setting electrical line grids. The process is seconds, minutes, hours, and meters, and metrics and scale that balances every location system, how you see an information setting, all through projection of light and travel. Okay? So mastering that through communications, you come into particle system. Okay? So your particle system goes with you in directions and that setting. So it's all about understanding how to come into that. It's kind of like weaving in, weaving out, weaving in, weaving out, going in, going out, going in, going out, right? So that's what the particles do. They travel and then they come back. They travel and they come back in center. They travel and they come back in center. So it's really interesting how you can do all different levels of operation and projection of light. Now we process that position, location, system, and travel. We convert the time frame line centers that doesn't change the second, minute over lines of time flux. It crosses the communication setting. Cross-examination, line direct centers, location, system. Now in that position location, we come into green lines. Okay, the green are lines of locations and positions. Now these are go meters. These are lines of course centers, line connection setting to your line center location in your system. These are your traffic jammers, directing lines, line course centers, pixelation graphs, and broadcasting location setting to travel. Converts time frame line center location system all through calculation. Okay? So it's really mastering yourself with wire signatures, guys, traveling through the lights. Okay? And the spectrum, your location system, you are inside the center traveling through it. So I'm going to bring it in like this and show you. Okay, so this is you traveling inside the center. Okay, like this. Inside the center of wire signatures, each level that comes in position of processing. You travel inside that with wires, right? Each one, okay? So you look at that, but you're looking at wire signatures of your system, okay? You have to modify coloration lines and patterns and understand it through a light metaphor, through coloration lines, light projections. So puts your position location system. How many line signals are you going to go through data streams of operation? Okay, that signifies line grounds. Now it stands precedes everything elongated to your system in long ground centers. So we convert the system in angles. We process line set location that stands precedes location setting to travel. These are docking stations that travel into wire signature lines communication. So each one has an energetic graph line that you process through. So each one that you process that position location, you set up a jump program, okay? Then you modify your settings, you go through 3 signals, and then you set up a jump scar to each one line signal. So this modifies the wire signatures, what you're processing through. As you're going through line communication lines, coloration lines, lights, but you're processing direct centers of the particle streaming is going with you all together in all information setting, all timelines all at once, okay? So it's very powerful how you come in that position lines of travel, okay? So this is just traveling through lights, guys, through box frames. We got a long way to go. So in that position location to travel, this is the next level you have to indicate through. Okay, in that process of communications. Directing grounds, let's go in signature ground lines, operation signals. Data ports, data stations, operation line ground sent, location operation lines of travel. Okay, so we have 3 line rotors, line conditions, and 2 lines of charge makes line time frames. So that puts position lines of power over generation lines of portal line operation and signify into 3 centers of travel, 4 centers of measure, 5 centers of scale of communication. Directing line grounds, how you operate the signals of location settings. Is that position. So what you're doing is you're setting a recourse line channels, operation line grounds into XT1 flights, operation line signals, and platted operation service in crop circles of design. Sets calculation line operation signals, puts position location of systems all through travel calculations. Setting convergent lines and line signals to its operation setting of wire signatures of panel. Okay? Now, that is just the one box frame. Okay? Just one box frame. So remember I told you, next Friday you guys have your test. It's already done through its equation. I want to see 4 window panels on 4 different line signals inside position of operation. Okay? So I want you guys to understand how to go through wire signatures now, because you're coming out of not just the consolidarity, but you're coming into waves now. Okay? And that's how you see the symbiote, all different directions, how I can put my hand out and you can see it very thin or very thick. You can see the particles go up and down in that position was processed, all 3 directions inside calculations. Okay? All right. So you work with that line, stance precedes everything, and then you go into the next line of communication pixelation graph. Each wire signature, okay, goes to line signals. Now that process lines position location through your system as the symbiote goes to the lines of travel. The higher self creates the core centers of human residence. The avatar sets the solar line screen locations or next 2,000 provision to its system, to its biofields, and its mechanism lines of travel. Okay? They calculate the line condition to the sim overrides and overlooks everything from above, from below, and that settings. The oversoul is the landmass that processes everything the wire signatures lines of travel. That converts the system all through settings. So the particle streaming is going in the right directions in set lines of seconds, minutes, and hours, and flights in the manifold. That puts a manifest line core centers to echo screens, process lines of your sonar, directing lines of ground line communication, wire signature lines of panels, high operation lines that communicates the system all through travel. Okay? So it's very important how to get and position the wire signatures in all set location with settings all through set position of operation to clocking. Okay? So you work with that one, and then you work with that set position. So all this is calculated and modified in your set lines of communication system, all through setting, all through operation setting to your Earth and travel, your Earth. Okay, so we got 3 signature line grounds, and then we plot it to the body line frequency line conditions that goes to the projection of light. Now, each wire signature has a panel line. Now, that changes the seconds over time flights. The process lines has a manifold location setting that manifests location of console that has a navigator to its navigation setting that goes to a delta heading and a force mason system and calculates from plasma using walls that goes to 7 channels, 7 operations, 7 communications, 7 locations. All right? So you have to convert each line angle that process lines direct centers to wire signatures. 0 lines operates signals location system that gets into the Xylons. Okay, Xylon is the lines of computer operation system that goes to the platforms of wire signatures locations that come into the internet location setting that puts a deeper impact to your process calculation how to go through the wire signatures lines of travel. Okay, so that position lines its body and it comes in line operations. Seconds, minutes, and hours, and flights, and that position location system all through travel. Okay, it's Earth. Okay, so therefore makes a system. Change time centers line connections as spectrum. And spectrum lights comes to travel. Operation lines of signal locations. All right. So it's all about understanding the position lines of setting at 12 line signals to 24 lines of clocking. In which it's in the 24 lines of clocking, it automatically goes into the frame lines and the particle and the streaming, the protons, electrons, neutrons, and the photons, and everything to the positron and neutron. Basically, it moves in position lines of setting. So it calculates, modifies, it codifies the grounds, operates the signals, lines of travel, correlates the calculates lines of seconds, minutes, and hours, go to gauge meters, slide meters, high meter location, set line communications, cartridge line levels, that puts all communication system all through travel calculations, all through direction. Okay? All right, so you got to go through 12 line pixelation grounds, okay, to your position of your Earth. You have transits of 6, and you got line communication habitation zones, and you got 6 inhabitation zone of outer space inside spectrum of you that you have to process and engage through. All right. So setting that position location lines, let's get into the green forestry. Okay, so we've got the green line signals. Now we're going to operate line ground center pixelation lines. That process lines is seconds over metric over meters of a scale. Your capacity changes every 3 seconds. Okay, and that process line directs centers to 6 over 9 to 12 to 24 clocking. Once it reaches lines 24, it's now in a frame line operation coming into position of 72 computer line signals. The process line core centers puts position 144 flux. That puts the conversion system into line connection setting to incognito, which is line communication being invisible. Now that process lines the settings. So remember, it starts with 3 seconds into 6 to 9 to 12 to 24. There's a process communication at 144 flux. That gets you in default, that gets you in operation signals, in location setting, that process you in direction center locations, how you merge the calculation line grounds, operation lines of panels, and set lines of communication. Okay, your Earth. All right, so I'm just going to stay with the basic grounds. You guys are really more familiar with your Earth, how you see it, but you see it on any color, but I'm just showing you how to understand the water links. That has a line signal location, nothing but plasma. So it has interline connection setting interlobing. Interlobing location setting has a decompressor to a compressor line connection setting. Water line operation signals. Process direct centers location system that travels its rotation cycle that high generates the position of flux over set position operation setting to travel. Sets calculation high center location your Earth and our process location your system. Now coming to position lines of settings, we process integrates setting line communication setting. 7 converting line communication, 7 dimension lines of water, so that process your 7 chakras location setting that comes in 12 line signals, process lines position 24 lines of angles. That puts line position 4,000 line rotation line cycles, high generate line communication capacity, high operation center location setting to calculate modifying travel. Put position location grounds, high center location system. Now process line direct centers, come in the country line operation signals. Okay, in position location system. Merging into transit, into operation line operation centers. Course centers line direct centers into platitude. And we operate the signals, location of the centers and travel. Merging lines, like your line grid line panels. Process line direct centers, how you modify your system of your earth rotations. Calculate lines of grounds, puts all position of your systems off the calculation of travel. In directions of location. Okay? So you want to work with in position pixelation graphs, okay, through your earth line. And then you stamp proceed everything, and then you go in your 7 jump programs. Okay, it's a 7-line signal, starting line, position, location, measure, and scale that has a time format that sets an argument line to reset lines to a reset line panel that processes the gauge in the meters and metrics to scale that puts you in position, location, in your system that puts you stamp proceeding to time frame lines as line signals. In that calculation lines, we bring in the security lines of valves, process over 1, process over 2, and process over 3 in set position. Okay. 3 signal lines of grounds, and then we modify line position, all track locations. Lecture line gridding, process lines of 3 signals, and line communication setting. Working in operation lines of surface and travel, right? So putting jump scars in 4 centers of signals, security panels, process of 1, process of 2, docking stations of 4, operation lines of 6 over lines, docking station lines of 8, and hangars over set lines of travel, converting inside an operation system and center operation setting of travel. Okay? So this is what you can do in a modification system all through earth and travel. Okay? So it just gets more complicated as you go into more of coloration lines as time and position the earth itself. So as you can see, there's more brown, right, than there's blue and green. So it all depends what you depict on your specific location setting, how you process the indication lines as your stamp proceeding location lines of color. So color itself, your line position, your computer operation, your CPU that processes your coding and position lines, your binary line communication encryption is nothing but a watermark that stamps precedes every location line centers that puts you in an AI customization system into your handlers, into your URLs, and your specific location setting that processes everything you do through your mind imaginations, all through travel, all through recognition. Okay? So that's one option that you can do in line grounds, and that puts all position, your measure, and scale. That converts the setting location lines of travel. Okay? So it gets a lot more interesting now because you're formulating and simulating yourself and understanding more lines and how you position your systems all through calculation and high calculation lines of travel. So everything that comes in position lines of center is a particle streaming. You understand the line center locations, that's where it comes into space-time discoveries, or basically I talk about everything to time zones or anything how the particles actually get in position lines of travel. They convert their system in settings, but they go in all the same direction in past, present, future. Particle lines ascend locations. Nothing does ever touch anything. It's just mind and conception. It changes the imagination. You change imagination, everything comes in resource. Now, coming into that position of its course, self-directing line ground center location setting, understand the delta headings that you're processing through. Directing lines of course centers, how you convert the system beginning into position of specifications, how you go through the travels and direct lines of ground centers in your calculation setting to your formulas equation that puts you in your biofields and operation lines of signal. Okay? So, in that position lines of travel, we have 4 lines of indicators, and we got 4 lines of settings in one cycle. Okay? So you're just seeing the difference of a perspective, how you see lines of center location of modem, Wi-Fi, satellites, and towers. You're going to modify that position location, understand that line position on a 7-line scale, because it's 7-line rotation of a 7-digit lines of number, lines of area code 3, line position location setting. So calculate and modify lines of 1. Now 1 line count relates and set into a failsafe that processes the indication system back to 0. So that's calculate and modify. That's our process lines of 4 over 5 over 6, percent lines of travel. So that calculates lines of 4 over 6 over 7 over 8 are lines of travel of communications. It's that position over 2 over travel, or 4 lines of signals, or 6 lines of 8 lines of 10, and position lines of circulation and rotation lines of travel. So everything's different, just in perspective how you see the truth. That follows everything to its bridging of 4 to 2 streaming, direct lines of grounds, and position lines of measure. The particle system is streaming, direct lines of high certification system all through travel. It calculates and modifies line can mitigate setting. What does it create lines of your earth rotation setting? It's mapping system. Okay? So, getting in that direct centers, you have to understand how to process the grounds, okay? And how you process the signals, what you want to do in set position. How do you want to operate the signals of your simulation system that puts you in graphs of communication inside travel, okay? And then you bring your programs in again, okay, like this, here and here and here. Okay, operating signals, running ops and screen location setting, converging, time frame line centers, puts position locations, because all you're creating is teleportation vessels. And that's all done how you bring, how many programs you want to bring, how many characters you want to bring, how many players you want to bring in your simulation sim. Okay, That's understanding that you've already done this through its equation. Now, it's a force of recognition that goes through time. It's a force of recognition that goes through its operation. It's a force of recognition that goes through its always in its center. It's set lines of travel of communication. Okay? But it's very powerful how you see it on all levels and set position of operation. Okay, so I'm just showing you so many signals, how you can modify your system, how you see your eye, and fast track locations and set calculation through the sim. Okay, so the drawing just gets a lot more confusing to your anomalies and travel. Okay, but you understand the mapping system, how you modify everything in set position of setting. Okay, so let's go into failsafe over 0. That process lines of 1 over centers. I'm communicating the voice line panel to 0, 2, and I go through lines of 0, 3. Set position is 0, 4, and I go back to the failsafe, back to 0. Okay? So that calculate and modify kicks me out of kick drive, puts me in another process, another angle, another communication, another model, another prototype, in set position location with simulation grounds and new mapping system that the brain sets up in center operation of itself. Self-modification lines, 42 lines, 42 streaming, 6 lines of 8, 8 lines of 12, 24 lines of clocking, 0 of operation. Okay? Converts to centers inside line communications. Okay? There's your Skynet. And you see your Skynet in all formation setting, in all directions of locations. But you get stamp proceeding, data ports, data stations, docking stations, and hangar stations and launch pads. So the X8000 comes in platitude, operation grounds, and the 42 lights, streaming line, position, location, pixelation graphs, picks up the package line, directs, and locations, distributes the position of what you bring in through manifestation lines of ground, center lines of sequence. Process that position to its mothership, mask the line center locations, converting into the mother load. That masks the core centers and calculation lines of travel. That process discharge, dispatch, and location system, bring it up line operation signals that you process through directions of crop circles and 42 lights, 42 streaming, and process of flux. Okay? That's signals inside lines of travel. There you go, in set position of operation. Okay? So it's modify how you see things in all different angles of the sim itself in traction. Okay? So let's really understand how to modify the center of the operation system, understand how to go through that line communication setting so the particle system knows exactly what you're doing through streaming. That puts a line communication here to detect, line course centers that engage to information setting to disengage, knowing exactly how to go through line position locations. That's right, the position lines is carbon-based, silicone, how you want to liquidize everything, how you want to bring everything to the cerebral fluid that neutralizes everything to neuralizes core centers, that communicates in grounds, high core centers, discharge, dispatch, process, and distribution centers. Now that puts all communication system, how you plotted your division location lines and centers, the higher line communications travels, has a direct line link that processes everything of travel communication. Okay? And then you bring your box frames in that position locations. All right? And you work with the ground grids and the simulation grounds. Okay, outside signals, inside lines of travel. Okay? So that puts position of 1 center operation into the webbing lines and 3 lines of flux over travel. Okay, and then you work with the yards and meters, metrics, and scale. The balance of communication setting, converting line operation signal location to sim that modifies everything to the sim location of travel. Puts operation system and center operations of Fibonacci, work with the chakra operation system, 12 line signals, the ground lines of set travel. Okay, then you get position lines of setting, merge here, it calculates in center, operate the signals of center, operate the centers of center, location of center. To a set position of operation. Set position of center travels in point lines into measure and scale. 42 lights of travel. Outside signal, outer spectrum of space lines of anomaly in set position and calculation. Okay? Converting time centers of lock line operation setting that puts position lines in measure and scale of communication lines merging. Operation line signals puts position location in tango foxtrot. So the more you talk to your formation setting, the more you calculate and modify through X8000, your formation system, all through travel. Okay? Easy. All right, so that's one identification code line, frame line communication with setting. So the more you understand your 12 vessels of accelerants and particles going through the actual travels of light in the operation system and know exactly how to see it, information lines of lights, lines of location system that processes everything you travel through, then you understand what's going on through the astral projection of yourself, through doppelgangers and you and travel. Okay, all through Earth into its conception of its mind inception itself. All right, so it's very interesting how we formulate and simulate ourselves in structural line design lines. That puts everything in platitude and rotation system, right? So you got to start seeing the mass and the perspective of everything now. How you see a 1, right? This is a 1, okay? That's a 1 because it's never 1. It's 1, now it's 2, now it's a box, now it's a circle, now it's a line, Okay, that's codification grounds right there, right? So it has a formula of 0, process of 0, 0, and process lines of 0 over 1, process lines of 0 over triangulation, and 1 over 0, 3, 0, 2, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0. Okay? So you modify how you want to see your setting that depicts the system all through travel. It has a betting line operation system that platitude location setting and process communication lines and calculation lines travel. Process at direct set location graph lines puts position, location, measure, and scale of communication. Directing 0, process box, process lines of 2 over 1 over flux. Set lines position of bounce and both sides lines of calculation setting. Converting time frames, line connected time flux line ground centers, operation line signals into 1, 2, 3, and set lines position of scale over set position of operation. Platitude operation of grounds and set position of platform. Platform over line course centers, directing line positions, tether line operations at a 50% mark. Directing line modulation system and travel communication setting converts the timeline centers in location ask projection that you bring in through programming that runs operation all at once and set positions calculation. Okay? That's my equation. All right? So it's amazing how you see it in a higher levels of structure, speed, and acceleration lines of setting. So you guys are going to process more indicates in system, how you go through your own travels of mechanisms, high set position letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. Modifying that through its information system, working with that through travel, puts all communication system all through your Skynet and set calculation. Okay? And you can see it in all platforms and set lines of position of travel. Okay? Converting time frame, locking grounds, high centers, change line communication setting, and configuration system all through set lines and lines. So it's amazing how you can formulate and simulate yourself and see your set position locations all through scale, all through communication, all through meter. Metric meters over scale, metric meters over miles, or kilometers, location setting that process your position, location, and grounds. Operation lines and panels, set lines of 0 over 1s, 0s over 0, 0s over 2, 0s over 3, and 0s over 4 in set position of operation. Panel operation lines, echo screens, directing lines of delta heading, tango, tango, foxtrot, 42 lights of webbing, operation line course centers, line communication lines of travel. Okay? So there's a lot going on in its activity of location setting and travel. Okay? So there you go. Set position all through I-line rotations. Center operation setting calculation. Okay? So there you go. All right. All right, so we're going to get position lines of center. I want you to process your indication system first and know exactly how to go through 4 windows of indications. Okay, in that directions. Next Friday interaction. Okay? All right, so we're going to constellation path, level C, level D, level C, level D. I'll see you guys in 5. Adios.